Greetings. Today, we'll take a detailed look at how authentic American dumplings are made, what makes them unique, and why they've become a cult dish, from New York restaurant kitchens to Midwestern home dinners. While in China, the word dumpling evokes images of dumplings or other stuffed pastries. In American culinary tradition, the concept is broader and more distinctive. American dumplings aren't primarily thin dough pastries filled with meat, but rather tender, fluffy dumplings or steamed buns, prepared both on their own and as a hearty accompaniment to soups and stews. Their history traces its roots to the culinary practices of early European settlers, who adapted their recipes to local produce. This dish of survival, comfort, and simplicity has evolved into a national culinary phenomenon. Today we'll take a closer look at what these culinary clouds are made of, and why they're so airy, and what their magic is that turns ordinary chicken soup into the legendary chicken and dumplings. Let's get started. The entire universe of American dumplings is built on a fundamental divide, rooted in the country's settlement history and the availability of ingredients. These aren't just two recipes. They're two distinct culinary principles that define regional preferences and the dish's texture. Understanding this dichotomy is the key to mastery. The first and most archaic type are drop dumplings, or dumplings. Their origins are linked to the cuisine of pioneers and settlers, where speed, simplicity, and minimal utensils were paramount. The technique reflects this utilitarian approach. The dough is kneaded directly in a bowl until it reaches a thick, sticky, and uneven consistency, after which it cannot be shaped by hand. Its consistency is intentionally kept moist and coarse. When preparing, a spoonful of dough is simply held to the edge of a pot of simmering broth or stew, and, with a sharp motion, the dough ball is dropped into the boiling liquid. The heat shock instantly sets the outer layer, preventing the dough from completely dissolving. Over the next 10 to 15 minutes of simmering under a tightly sealed lid, a critical process occurs. Steam rising from the broth cooks the inside of the dumplings, creating a porous, airy texture, while the bottom, submerged in liquid, soaks in fat and juices, becoming dense and rich. The result is uneven, lumpy, yet incredibly tender and moist clouds of dough that lack a distinct shape but perfectly absorb the flavor of the base. This is a method native to the American South and Midwest, where it has become an integral part of comfort cuisine, transforming simple chicken soup into a thick, hearty stew called chicken and dumplings. The second type, rally dumplings, or rolling dumplings, is a more structured and Europeanized version. Its roots can be traced to the traditions of English and German settlers, who brought with them the skill of working with stiffer, more easily rolled dough. The process is crucial. The dough is kneaded until it barely sticks to the hands, then placed on a floured surface and rolled with a rolling pin into a layer 5 to 10 millimeters thick. This layer is then cut with a knife or a special wheel into squares, rectangles, or diamonds. These dumplings are often steamed, placed on top of simmering broth or vegetables, but not completely submerged. They are steamed under a lid, maintaining their geometric shape. The result is denser, more flaky, sponge-like pillows with distinct edges. Their texture is firmer and their flavor more distinct, as they are less soaked in broth. This method is typical of the northern states, where it is often associated with dishes like beef stew with dumplings. The difference between these types is a difference in philosophy. Drop dumplings are an integration. They become part of the dish, changing both their texture and the consistency of the sauce they're cooked with. Rally dumplings are an addition. They retain their autonomy, serving as a standalone garnish that merely touches the main dish. The choice of type determines not only the technique, but also the final character of the entire meal. Whether it will be a smooth, cozy stew or a clearly structured meat with a pastry garnish. But American dumplings are a masterclass in creating complex textures from a minimal set of simple ingredients. Each component in their recipe performs not just one, but several interrelated functions, and an imbalance or disruption in their application results not in variation, but in the loss of the dish's very essence, its characteristic weightless yet satisfying texture. Flour is the framework, but its selection and processing are strictly regulated. Only all-purpose wheat flour with a protein content of around 9 to 11% is used. Flour with a high gluten content, such as bread flour, will make the dumplings too elastic and rubbery, depriving them of the necessary crumbliness. The flour is sifted not so much for aeration as to remove any lumps and ensure even mixing with the baking powder. The most important technological step is mixing the flour with solid, chilled fat to a coarse crumb consistency. To do this, butter or shortening is grated on a coarse grater or chopped with knives, and then manually ground into the flour. This process serves two purposes. Firstly, the fat particles, enveloping the starch and protein grains, create a fatty barricade, which subsequently, when heated, melts, forming microscopic layers and voids, the basis for crumbliness. Secondly, it physically prevents the gluten proteins from hydrating and forming a strong, elastic network when liquid is added. The leavening system is the heart of the process. It's dual, chemical and steam. Chemical leavening is achieved through a precise reaction between baking soda and acid. Baking soda, or sodium bicarbonate, requires an acidic environment to activate. Buttermilk, a low-acid dairy product, has historically and ideally fulfilled this role. Its acidity not only triggers a reaction with the immediate release of carbon dioxide, but also imparts a subtle, piquant flavor to the dough. The gas forms numerous small bubbles in the dough. If buttermilk is unavailable, it is created artificially by adding vinegar or lemon juice to the milk and letting it sit for a few minutes to curdle. An additional and essential leavening agent is the steam generated during the cooking of the dumplings in a sealed container. The steam permeates the porous dough, expanding existing bubbles and further lifting the dough, creating an airy, moist effect. The liquid component, whether buttermilk, milk, or a substitute, is always used ice cold. This is necessary to keep the fat solid for as long as possible. The liquid is poured into the dry mixture, and kneading is completed in just a few strokes with a spatula or fork. As soon as the mixture comes together and no visible patches of dry flour remain, the process is stopped. The dough will appear uneven, ragged, and sticky. Any additional kneading activates the gluten, and the dumplings will be dense and heavy after cooking. There's no filling in the classic sense. The flavor profile is shaped solely by the synergy with the broth. However, aromatic additives can be incorporated into the dough without disrupting its structure. Very finely chopped parsley or dill, chopped chives, or black pepper. In southern variations, a pinch of paprika or cayenne pepper is sometimes added for a subtle spiciness. In more recent, restaurant-style interpretations, a tiny piece of cold butter or grated cheese may be placed in the center of the rally dumpling, which melts during cooking, creating a moist core. But this is the exception, not the rule. Thus, the composition of dumpling is a carefully calibrated formula where flour, fat, acid, and cold work together, producing not so much a separate dish as the perfect textured companion, capable of transforming and enriching any stew or soup. Transforming a simple set of ingredients into distinctive, airy dumplings is a controlled physical and chemical process, where every step, from the temperature of the ingredients to the movement of steam, is crucial. Deviating from the technology here doesn't lead to variation, but rather to the complete loss of key textural qualities. The initial and critical stage is preparation and cold kneading. All dry ingredients, flour, salt, and baking soda, must be thoroughly mixed in a bowl to evenly distribute the chemical. Separately, very cold, almost solid butter is grated on a coarse grater. It's important not to let the butter soften from the warmth of your hands. It is quickly rubbed into the flour mixture with your fingertips or chopped with 2 knives until it reaches a consistency resembling coarse wet sand with individual pea-sized particles of fat. The goal is not homogeneity, but the creation of numerous isolated fat particles. Meanwhile, the liquid phase is cooled. Ideally, buttermilk or its substitute, milk with acid, should be ice cold. The cold liquid is poured into the dry mixture, and a silicone spatula or fork is used to begin incorporating it. The kneading process lasts no more than 20-30 seconds, just long enough to eliminate any dry pockets of flour. The mixture will look unappetizing, lumpy, choppy, with visible clumps of unmixed butter and flour. This is the correct consistency. At this stage, any additional kneading will hydrate the gluten proteins, which will eventually result in a dense, stringy texture instead of the desired crispness. For rally dumplings, this sticky dough is gently formed into a ball directly in the bowl, transferred to a generously floured surface, and gently rolled out with a rolling pin into a 1.5 inch thick layer. Excessive pressure during rolling is also dangerous, as it compresses the layers and destroys the fragile structure. The layer is cut into squares or diamonds with a sharp knife or a dough wheel. The central step is cooking in saturated steam under pressure. Regardless of the type, dumplings are prepared not by boiling, but by steaming in a confined space over simmering liquid. To do this, the soup or stew is brought to a vigorous, but not vigorous boil. It's important that there's enough liquid to generate steam, but not so much that it completely covers the dumplings as they fall. Drop dumplings are formed with 2 spoons dipped in water and carefully placed on the surface, leaving 2 to 3 centimeters of space between them, as they will expand significantly. Rally dumplings are laid out in a single layer. Then the pot or saucepan is immediately and tightly covered with a lid. From this point on, the lid should not be opened for at least 10 to 12 minutes for a standard serving. This rule is not to be violated. A microclimate is created under the lid, with a temperature of approximately 95-98 degrees Celsius and 100% humidity. Steam rising from the boiling broth acts as the primary heat transfer agent. It evenly heats the dough from all sides, allowing the baking soda and steam to react fully, lifting the dough and creating a porous structure. At the same time, the bottom side exposed to the broth cooks slightly, forming a denser, juice-rich crust. Opening the lid releases steam, causing a sharp change in temperature and pressure, which collapses the delicate porous structure. The dumplings shrink and become dense and slightly damp inside. Determining doneness is a tactile and visual test. After a minimum amount of time, gently lift the lid. The finished dumplings should expand in volume, their surface turning from matte to smooth and slightly moist. Light finger pressure should meet with elastic resistance, after which the dumplings quickly regain their shape. The most reliable method is to pierce the largest dumpling with a toothpick or thin knife. It should come out virtually clean, with no trace of wet, sticky dough. After this, turn off the heat and let the dish sit, covered for another 2 to 3 minutes, away from the heat, to allow the structure to fully mature. This technique, based on steam control and abstinence, transforms a simple dough into a culinary paradox, a rich yet airy accompaniment that is an integral part of the sauce, not just an addition. American dumplings are more than just a dish. They are a powerful cultural marker, signaling homeliness, simplicity, and comfort. Their place on the table and the way they are served are deeply rooted in American social history and continue to evolve, reflecting regional identities and contemporary trends. Historically, dumplings were a culinary response to economic necessity. During the pioneer era and the Great Depression, they provided maximum nutrition with minimal use of expensive ingredients like meat or poultry. A handful of flour, a spoonful of fat, and a little liquid could transform a humble chicken broth or stewed game into a hearty, calorie-dense meal for the whole family. Therefore, dumplings remain inextricably linked with the concept of comfort food, food that provides psychological comfort and nostalgic warmth. They are associated with grandmother's cooking, Sunday family dinners, and the ability of simple food to bring satisfaction. The presentation of dumplings reflects their utilitarian nature. They are never served separately. They are an integral part of a dish that bears a common name, such as chicken and dumplings or beef stew with dumplings. They are served directly from the pot or sauté pan in which they were cooked, often in deep bowls or even small bowls. The dumplings occupy the top layer, partially submerged in a thick sauce or broth, with pieces of meat, poultry, and vegetables beneath. They are typically eaten with a spoon, sometimes combined with a fork, as their delicate texture makes it difficult to pierce them without breaking. It's a one-plate dish, where the side dish, sauce, and main course merge into one. Regional differences in presentation and execution are noticeable. In the American South, the classic dish, chicken and dumplings, is often a thick, almost chowder-like stew with dumplings. The broth is cloudy and rich, often made with a boiled whole chicken, while the dumplings, when cooked down, further thicken the sauce. In the Midwest, a more distinct distinction can be found: a clear broth, boiled vegetables, and individual, well-formed rally dumplings. In the North, and in areas with German influence, dumplings may be thicker, seasoned with parsley, and served with braised beef. It's also worth noting that creating perfect dumplings is often shrouded in myth and family secrets, but their texture obeys clear physical and chemical laws. Understanding the typical mistakes and the science behind the process allows you to not just follow the recipe, but consciously control the outcome. A critical and most common mistake is overmixing the dough, which leads to dense, rubbery dumplings. This is caused by overworking the dough after adding liquid. Gluten proteins begin to form an elastic network when in contact with water, and the goal is to only lightly hydrate the flour, leaving this network undeveloped. This is why a perfect dough should remain lumpy and torn. Prolonged kneading creates a strong framework that prevents gas and steam bubbles from expanding freely, and during cooking, it will produce a tough, stringy structure. The second critical mistake is opening the lid during cooking. This isn't culinary folklore, but a matter of phase transition physics. When the lid is closed, an environment of increased pressure and a temperature approaching 100 degrees Celsius is created over the boiling liquid. Steam is the primary agent that cooks the top of the dumpling and causes the dough to rise. Opening the lid causes an immediate drop in pressure and temperature. The carbon dioxide inside the pores is compressed sharply. The delicate structure collapses and the dumpling settles, after which it will no longer regain its airiness. The process is similar to opening the oven prematurely when baking a soufflé. The third system error is using warm ingredients. The function of cold butter and icy liquid is to delay the melting of the fat. Solid fat particles dispersed in the flour create physical barriers to the gluten. In warm dough, the fat melts immediately, mixing with the flour into a homogeneous mass, which promotes gluten development and deprives the dumpling of its flaky, crumbly texture. Thus, cold is not a whim, but a technological necessity. The scientific basis for the fluffiness lies in the double leavening mechanism. The texture of dumplings is the result of two types of leavening agents acting sequentially. The first is chemical leavening, a reaction between baking soda and the acidity of buttermilk or vinegar begins instantly when the ingredients are mixed. Carbon dioxide forms the initial network of tiny bubbles in the raw dough. This is why dough should not be left to sit for long before cooking, as the gas will escape. The second is steam leavening. When placed in a hot environment, the moisture inside the dough quickly turns to steam. Steam, being a gas, occupies a larger volume than water. It expands existing carbon dioxide bubbles and creates new ones. Because the dough is confined under the lid, the steam cannot easily escape, and the pressure gently pushes the dough upward, fixing the porous structure. Gelatin and fats from the broth in which the bottom of the dumpling is immersed further strengthen the structure, preventing it from becoming too brittle. A common myth is that eggs are necessary to bind the dough. When denatured by heat, egg white and albumin create a dense, elastic network, ideal for noodles or some types of dumplings, but detrimental to the airiness of dumplings. The absence of eggs is a key feature of the classic recipe, ensuring precisely that light, crumbly texture. Thus, ideal dumplings are the result of precisely managing four variables: minimal gluten, retained carbon dioxide, controlled steam expansion, and the thermal shock from cold dough to hot steam. This is not magic, but applied food science, where every rule is a direct consequence of the fundamental laws of physics and chemistry. Adherence to these principles guarantees the transformation of three basic ingredients, flour, fat, and liquid, into a culinary textural marvel where airiness and richness exist in perfect balance. In contemporary restaurant culture, dumplings are undergoing a reinterpretation. Chefs may make them with unusual flours, for example with cornmeal, add truffle oil or cheese to the dough, or use them as a base for sophisticated sauces, such as those with game or mushrooms. However, even in these interpretations, their primary function remains as a delicate, sauce-absorbing element that adds texture and heartiness to a dish. They have moved from the category of pure survival food to that of a nostalgic yet relevant gastronomic object, symbolizing both historical pragmatism and a modern desire for authentic, simple flavors. Their enduring popularity proves that culinary magic often lies not in exoticism, but in the masterful execution of fundamental principles. That's all for today's video. Don't forget to like and subscribe to the channel so you don't miss any videos. See you soon.